Well, I do believe I might finally be live, and if I am, and you can hear me, please let me know in the chat, and then we can get going. Thank you, YouTube, for that. The problem is their main servers are down, so I'm routing through backup servers, and hopefully you will be able to hear me. I'm going to send a quick message and try and get somebody who is watching, I know is watching, and ask them if they can hear me. And hopefully the answer will be yes. You don't want to miss this. You don't. It is a fantastic system. How many of you are using Scrivener already? Oh, fantastic. I'm hearing that at least one person can hear. That's marvellous. So 10 minutes late, but hopefully you can finally hear me. I'm going to put my slides up now and get going with this. While my slides are on the screen, I won't be able to see the chat. But if you want to put some questions in, feel free, and I will get round to answering them either once I've finished the slides or during the demonstration. So put all your questions in. And we'll get going. Oh, YouTube, what a time to fail on me. Okay, just getting those slides ready and we can go. Right, so hello and welcome. Again, I apologise for the delay. It was YouTube. Of all the days, honestly. So today we're looking at Scrivener for iOS. So just for those of you who don't know, I'm Elaine Giles. I've been an IT trainer for a long, long time. Currently present the Mac Bytes podcast. And why I'm talking to you about Scrivener is that I've used Scrivener since version 1 was in alpha. Not a beta, it was an alpha. It was very basic, but even then, it was fantastic. And I moved on to beta testing it. I then used something called Scrivener Gold before version 1 came out, and version 2, and I've been beta testing Scrivener for iOS for the last few weeks. Now, I expected that most people who were joining us today would know what Scrivener was, because they've used the desktop version either for Mac or for Windows. But I've heard from people that they've heard how good Scrivener is, but they've either just never needed it, never bothered to look at it, or they looked at it and the fact that there was no mobile element was enough to put them off. And that was it. They couldn't use it because there was no mobile element. So if you've never seen Scrivener, if you have no idea what it is, it's an application for writers or content creators. And it's much more than a traditional single app. I'd say it's more accurate to call it a writer's studio. And I'm just wondering if you can actually see my slides. And I'm thinking that the answer to that is probably no. So let me just make a change there and hopefully you'll be able to see them. Right, let's try that. If you can see those, let me know. Okay, so as I say, it's more than a traditional app. It's a Swiss Army knife for writers. It's got every feature in that you could possibly need, and probably some you will never even look at. It's best explained by looking back to life before Scrivener. And back then, you were writing, it tended to be a monolithic production. If you were really lucky, you started at the beginning and you wrote on until the end. And hopefully you never needed to change anything, like a character name halfway through. Or you never needed to reorganise anything, in which case Microsoft Word was your friend and it ruled the writing world. And it does have a lot of fantastic features and it's still used a lot for commenting and passing work backwards and forwards and reviewing work. But I don't know about you, but when I'm writing or creating content, my mind is a maelstrom of ideas and they refuse to arrive in an orderly manner and queue patiently waiting for me to get round to capturing them in a neat and linear way. It doesn't happen like that. I'll be writing one piece of it and I'll think, oh, I need to mention this, demonstrate that, do a tutorial on that. And I tend to have a post-it note next to me and I'm scribbling on it. And that's not the best way to capture it. There's no organisation to it. So if you think about how Word worked, even if you got past all of that, do you keep all of your content in a single file? You know, I've written books and I have written them in Word, and you're looking at 200 and odd pages in a training manual. It's very, very difficult to manage in a single file. What I did, the only feature that I could find in Word that helped was that there was a basic outline. And that was it. Other than that, it was a nightmare. But a single file, I did have the benefit of doing search and replace, and it was just one file. But I longed to have separate files for each individual chapter because it made it easier to manage. Word isn't good when there's lots of screenshots in it. But even multiple files had their problems. Doing search and replace across files was a nightmare. Piecing them together in the right order was a nightmare. To be honest, digital just hadn't caught up with analogue, how we would prefer to work. And of course, if you ask a group of content creators what's the most important application feature that would help them get their job done, you'd probably get 1,000 different suggestions, and there's a really good reason for that. Any piece of content that you create, it doesn't exist in isolation from other information. You write a paragraph, a scene, a chapter, and there's information about that content that you need to retain, but it isn't part of the content. And what I mean by that is, if you've written a chunk of content, you may have notes related to that content that you've worked from. You doubtless have got research. They may be links that you've got from the internet. You may like to put metadata with it. You might like to keyword it or colour code it or give it a status or know how many words there are in it. But a word count isn't part of the content. It's ancillary to it. And that's where Scrivener comes in. And it was initially for Mac, later for Windows, now it's for iOS. And it can manage all of that information that you've just seen on the last slide and more besides. But there is a misnomer that it's not just for novels. It excels at writing novels, but that's not just it. Now, to give you an idea from my usage of it, I use it extensively to create training materials. And they could be long-form manuals, short tutorials, even if I've written it in something else. So if anybody has heard of Clarify, I may write content in Clarify, but there's no library and management options in that. So I bring it into Scrivener. I also use it for many, many other things. An obvious example would be writing magazine articles. I'm an author on a local magazine, and all of the content that I create for that magazine goes through Scrivener. But I don't limit myself to just what you would think of as being the standard written word. I actually use Scrivener to generate email newsletters. And when I say email newsletters, I don't just mean putting in standard text and copying and pasting it out into somewhere that I can send the mail. The whole thing happens in Scrivener. So if you look at this screenshot of Scrivener, this is a Scrivener file that I use to generate all the MacBites emails that go out for the podcast. And in the middle, you can see the editor. And what it's showing there is the elements that I have selected on the left-hand side. And the reason that it's better than just writing it out long form and pasting it into your email manager is that I can make last minute changes and include extra elements without having to copy and paste. And the time it takes to proofread this has gone down to virtually nothing. I select the chunks of information I want to include and I compile it into HTML. If you're actually technically inclined and you're looking at that, you may see there that that's a mixture of what's called Markdown and HTML. And it includes graphics and all sorts. And when I press the button in Scrivener, this is what that looks like. An email, that's the HTML version of that email. And as you look down there, it's got the graphics in it, it's got headings in it, it's got links in it. And some of that is standard. So the block at the bottom is very, very standard. It's in every email. And that comes from Scrivener, no editing required. I also use it for course creation. And course creation is a longer form of creation. It's more complex. There's a lot more to it. Many elements to manage. And of course, if you're creating it for somebody else, which I have been doing, then I need to match their standards. They have very specific requirements when it comes to documentation required to support the course. So back in to look at Scrivener, that's what one of my courses look like. This is for a course on Pixelmator, and I managed it all in Scrivener, and I do mean all of it. The course creation, the content creation, the data creation, the recording schedule, tracking progress. What you're actually seeing there is a numbers spreadsheet. And that tracked the duration of the course. If I go a little bit bigger, you can see the whole thing. And everything that you see there, when I press a button, I get an exported file, a compiled file, that they can upload to their servers, and that is what it looked like. Everything that you see there came straight from Scrivener. So the fact that there's a video embedded there, there's an introductory paragraph, there's sections within the course, there's videos within that, there's durations shown, everything in there came straight from Scrivener. If I'd have had to have done that manually, I think the course would have taken me twice as long. So right down to the bottom where there's a profile, all of that came from Scrivener. There's also longer forms than that. This is a premium training course. There's over 11 hours of content. It was all prepared and organised in Scrivener. Same principle, just more of it. And halfway through the creation of that, this is what Scrivener looked like. This is what it can do for you. So again, this is really for the people who don't know what Scrivener is. For those of you who do, just think about how complicated this is, and you're now going to be able to do it on mobile. So I've got colour coding, I've got stamps, I've got labels, and do you know what's fantastic? It's great to see that interface turn green as I work through a course and everything is done. And the final thing that we use it for is actually creating MacBites. We moved, after trying virtually every other system out there 3 years ago, to using Scrivener to create everything we need to create a podcast, and we've never looked back. This is the real file that we use. You'll see that we've been using it since show 79, which was back in Christmas 2013, I believe, and we've used it for every episode since then. And you can see, isn't it nice when it all goes green and it's done? And if you are a MacBites listener, you'll see, look, there is another one on the way, and you even get a sneak peek of what it's actually called. If we just focus on what's in the document notes there, that again is Markdown, and we're back to the fact with Scrivener, press a button, get an export, and everything for that show exports to look like this. That is HTML. All it needs to do is be pasted into WordPress, and that is what it looks like. So there's very little work to do. Copy and paste, and we're done. So let's have a look at Scrivener for iOS, because that's how I use it, that's what it's for, but now I'm taking it mobile. As I say, the only issue for me had been the inability to work truly mobile on my iPad, and that problem's solved. Now let's have a look at what you need before you can take your Scrivener content mobile. You actually only need Scrivener for iOS. If you don't want to work on your desktop, you don't want to work on Windows, and you don't need to synchronize it, then you only need Scrivener for iOS. But I'm going to concentrate on the full Monty, everything, if you wanted it to work anywhere and everywhere. Then you'd need Scrivener for Mac, Scrivener for Windows, Scrivener for iOS, and everything is held together with Dropbox. Now, the Scrivener version for Mac you'll need is 2.8, which was released at the end of last week. And the minimum on Windows is Scrivener 1.9, which was released about 20 minutes ago if you're watching this live. So those are the versions you'll need for that. You will also need a Dropbox account, but that Dropbox account is free. Many people already have one. If not, I will explain when and how it all works. But let's actually go in and have a look at Scrivener for iOS. Right, I have my iPad, and what I'm going to do first is actually reflect it to the screen and show you how to install it and link it into Dropbox. So there is my iPad. Hopefully you can all see that. Now, it's not available in the store yet, okay? It will be available tomorrow. Don't have a time, but it will be available tomorrow. But I want to show you how simple it is to actually set it up. So I'm going to go into something called Test Flight, as I'm a beta tester. And this is what it looks like when you're beta testing something and you don't have it installed on an iPad. So I'm going to tap to install Scrivener. And it doesn't take a lot of room on your iPad. It's amazing how powerful it is and yet how tiny it is. Its footprint is very small, and that's it, it's installed. So I'm going back to my iPad, and there is the Scrivener icon on the left-hand side. So I'm going to tap on that, and this is the project browser. Now, as I said, you don't actually need Dropbox. You can actually work completely local. And to do that, you would tap to create a new project on your iPad. But of course, if you do that, you're into the manual business of transferring backwards and forwards if and when you need to work on your desktop. So the best thing to do is to link it into Dropbox. So I'm going to tap there. No, that's not what I want, is it? Come on, tap to drag into Dropbox. I actually want to go into Dropbox. Come on. That's, unlinked Dropbox. Interesting. It should actually... Right, let's try that again. It should actually not be linked because I unlinked it earlier. But never mind. Okay, it's going away and it's having a look at it. So I've got Dropbox on my system. I've got the Dropbox app and you can see what's happening behind. It's reading in what's been changed. And I'm just going to say, yes, allow access to Dropbox. Now, you need to do one thing and that's it. You need to tell it where your Scrivener files are stored within Dropbox. Now, I actually have my Scrivener files in Dropbox. I'm going to actually show you them on a Mac. So I'm going to open my Dropbox folder. There's my Dropbox folder and all its folders inside there. Within there, I have an apps folder. And within apps, I have a lot of apps. But this one is the Scrivener folder. And within there, you can actually see all of my Scrivener files. There they are. And why that one is still there, I am not quite sure, but never mind. Right, so there's the Scrivener files. What we need to do is hook into that from within Scrivener for iOS. Now, the default folder is your Dropbox folder, apps, Scrivener, and I've stuck with that. It's become pretty much a standard. If you don't want to use that, then you will tap other below that. But I'm going to say, yes, it's that top one, and I'm done. And what will happen now is it will start to synchronize everything that is in the Scrivener folder. And as you can see, there's quite a few files, 3,320 to be precise. It doesn't actually take long because most of them are tiny RTF files, but it will take longer than I want it to take at the moment. So I'm going to put that iPad on the other screen and I'm going to open up another iPad that I have carefully got Scrivener ready on another iPad. So there we go. Let's bring up that one and get that on the screen. Are you thinking about that? You are. That's jolly good. Right, let me get that one so you can see it. And we're good to go here. There we go. Right, so this one has got Scrivener on it. The only difference is that I've already synchronized it, as you can see. So I've got those 3,000 odd files downloading. I will let you know as soon as the other one finishes synchronizing, and it'll give you an idea for how long it would take to synchronize your work. Right, so I'm now physically moving an iPad out of the way so I can physically get to my other iPad and show you Scrivener for iOS. Right, there we go. Now, the file that I'll be working with is A Christmas Carol, but I want to, first of all, show you what you've got in your project organizer. On the left-hand side, you have a list of Scrivener documents that are stored within Dropbox. If you had any on this iPad, it would be underneath in the On My iPad section on the left. On the right-hand side, again, you are shown exactly the same files as you have on the left, and it shows you where they're stored. So it's showing you that they're actually within Dropbox. This is not telling me that anything needs synchronizing. But if I want to be sure, if I tap that icon in the top right-hand corner, it'll tell me it's synchronizing with Dropbox, and you saw it just quickly flash past and say it's all up to date. So to open a file, all you need to do is to tap it. So I'm going to open that Christmas Carol one. Now what you're looking at is the binder on the left-hand side. It's not identical to the desktop one, but it's very powerful and it's actually got extra features. So on the left-hand side, from the top down, you've got the binder. Within the binder, you can look at your recent files, the files you've edited within this file most recently. You can create bookmarks and navigate them from the bookmarks section. Underneath that, you can see it does actually say binder. So if I just show you there is the binder, and this down here is the content within the binder. Now this will differ depending on what content you have. This is using the novel template, so it has a section on the novel format, then it has the manuscript, then it has the characters within the novel, the places within the novel, the front matter, research binder, templates and the trash. On the right hand side, you have the corkboard. Love the corkboard. What that's showing you at the moment is not as useful as it will be if we were actually looking at the content of the novel. So to do that, I'm going to go into the manuscript. So on the left, I'm tapping manuscript. And what you can see there now is everything that is within the manuscript folder shown on the corkboard. So I can scroll that up and you can see everything that's in there. I can actually use this corkboard is to use. It's not there as an image just to show you. You can actually drill down into it. So if I tap on, in this case, it was stave 1. Within there are all the scenes that are within that first chapter. So again, I can scroll that. You can see that. If I wanted to read about Fred's visit, which is in the card in the top right, I just need to tap that once and it navigates inwards. So you drill down and there is the actual content of that scene. At this point, you're just reading it. You're not creating anything. You're just maybe reviewing it or just reading it. Now, what I need to do is actually explain everything that you've got in the interface because there's a lot here. So I'm going to use the back button just to go back a little bit and go back up to the top. Right. In terms of navigation, we drilled down into a project file. If I tap let me get that so you can see it. If I tap projects, that takes you back up a level to the very top level and you have all of your files in there. I'm going to tap back on A Christmas Carol so you know exactly where we are. We are within one single file. If you wanted to make changes in here, you can do. So you have an edit button at the top and you can see that if you decided that your novel format at the top, it's not that important to you. You can drag down and put that underneath the template sheets at the bottom. So you can actually use the binder to reorganize your content. While you're in edit mode like this, it's showing you a done button, but down the bottom, you can actually now work with a different set of options. So if I tap that one at the end, and I'm actually inside one of these things, so I've got content, I can move it downwards, I can move it up, and I can use the arrows at the bottom to do that. And then I tap the end one and it takes me out of that mode. Now, that would be a lot more use if I could actually see the contents of my manuscript while I do it. So if you tap the right facing arrow, you drill down. This is starting to look like the desktop version. You're drilling down into the content. Now, you have each chapter, which in this book is a stave, has two little icons next to its title. The first one, which looks like 4 squares, so we're looking at these two icons here. If I tap on that, it will show me the corkboard for that folder. If I tap on the arrow next to it, it will drill down into that content. Now, the only problem with this was during the beta development, it's very easy to get lost as to where you actually are within your entire file. And the more complicated the file is, the more that's true. For that reason, there are a couple of extra options that were built into Scrivener to help you with that. First of all, if you tap on the name at the top, so in the binder on the left hand side there is a bold area at the top, that reveals the path to you. And what you can actually do there is use that to navigate. If I tapped on manuscript, it would take me to there. If I tapped on A Christmas Carol, it would take me there. And if I tapped on projects, it would take me right back out to all my projects. And I'm just going to interrupt myself to let you know that the other iPad has synchronized. So I think that was possibly just over 5 minutes. So it doesn't take long, but in terms of how far we've already come, it wasn't worth sitting and looking at it. Right, so that's the path bar that will show you. I'm going to use the back button and go back. The problem during the beta testing was I'm still lost. I want to see more in this view. And that's not really how iOS works. iOS works where you drill down and you go back up. But what they've built into Scrivener is if you tap and, no, that's not what I wanted. If you tap and slide, so just slide across to the left, You have an option to move this content, but you also have an option to expand it. So I'm going to tap on expand. And what that does is two things. The most important of which is it expands the content within that particular folder. It doesn't do it to everything. So if you look at the ones at the bottom, they're not expanded, but it does it to just the one that you have expanded. If I want the fourth one expanded, I can do the same. So expand that and it shows that scene. The second thing it's doing is, if we look at stave 2, so let's go down and have a look at stave 2. There's the icon with the 4 squares and there's the arrow icon. This one now has an arrow icon in a circle. What that is telling you is that this is expanded. And to navigate these documents, you just need to tap them. As you tap them, they show in the editor on the right hand side. So as I go through, you can see it's changing because a lot of them are different colours. So that allows you to see that information over in the editor. And I'll show you if you wanted to close that up again, just do exactly the same, slide to the left and collapse that information. And it goes back to how it was before. Now, we've looked at the binder on the left-hand side, but now I've got information open in there. I want to just show you the icons at the bottom of the other things that you can do with it. So if I tap on Marley's Visit, that's the end of chapter 1, stave 1. But if I wanted to add extra content, I have the plus buttons, I have add a folder and add a scrivening or a document, which is a section of it. So if I just tap that plus, just to show you what happens, it brings up this new document. I'm going to put test document. Okay, and it would help, wouldn't it, if I typed it on my iPad? Oh, I've got too many keyboards here. There we go, test doc. I can put a synopsis in if I want, which is a little bit of an overview, but I'm just going to add that. And it's going to put it underneath Marley's Visit because that's what I had selected when I added it. So that's adding an individual file, but if you tap the folder icon, you can add a folder. So if I wanted to put extra scenes in there, I could do that. So, and again, I could add a synopsis if I wanted to do that. So there is what I've added. Now, actually, I don't need that information. So another thing to show you is, how do you delete something if you change your mind? Well, you've got move, but you've also got more. When you tap on more, you can do an awful lot with it. And the option I'm looking for is move to trash at the bottom. So if I do that, it moves it at the bottom. So you can work very, very well in a mobile way. You're not limited to just viewing it or tweaking it slightly. You could build up a course or a book within this. You've got all of those features there. Now, the other features that you've got available from here, let's have a look at Marley's Visit again. If I tap the second icon, which is a compile option, this is how you would export it. Now, I'm going to do that more at the end, but that's what that's for. It's for sending that information out of Scrivener. You can also bring elements in to Scrivener by tapping the next icon, which will allow you to bring in photos from your photo library. Now, Photos is there by default, as is iCloud Drive, but OneDrive I actually added in, and that's because I use OneDrive quite extensively. So if I wanted to add some extra content, I could tap on OneDrive and it would go away and it would load in all the folders from my OneDrive. And I actually created one in there, which it's not showing me helpfully. I created a Scrivener demo folder, which is not showing. So it's either updating itself or it's ignoring me, but I'll come back to that later. So it shows you that and then you drill down. So if I wanted to drill down into that, there's one element in there. All I need to do is to choose the item I want to bring in and bring it in. So I can export from there, I can bring things in from there, I can create new folders, I can add new elements. You also have a little cog, which is the one right across in the left-hand side. That's your project settings. Within there, you have options. So first of all, you can decide whether you want the sidebar to be compact, which it is at the moment on the left, or you can expand it. And you see, as you expand it, I'll just show you there, it moves out to just short of the middle and gives you that element there. You also have in here, so I'm going to go back to compact, but you also have in here options for the binder. And they're all turned off here by default. But in there, you've got show labels, tint rows with label colour, show statuses and show synopsis. This is how you make the binder look like the outliner that you may have seen in the desktop version. So let's say we do show the labels. Straight away you should see some colours appearing just across there on the left hand side. There they are. Tint the rows with label colours, we'll do that as well. Well, we might as well show the status and show the synopses, although I don't think there's actually too many of them. And then go back into the settings. You also have all of those options available where they're relevant with the corkboard. So I could show the status stamps, I could use the colours. Coming back, and there's the editor as well. Do you want to allow script writing? So all the elements that are relevant to that particular part of the application are available from within there. So I'm going to tap down there again to hide that, and you can see what that's actually done. So there is colour coding in here. It must mean something, and it actually does. So I'll just scroll down so you can see what you've got there. There you go. So how do we actually see things like that then? So we were looking at, there's Marley's Ghost, so I'll just show you what you've got here as well. You can't see it too well because it's very, very pale. But if I show you that across there, that actually says first draft. So that's what it means when you put a stamp on it there. And you can see the colours of everything that's in there. Now, what you can do is moving across to the corkboard here, you can take the corkboard full screen if you want to. Now, you don't have a back button, but what you do have, it says manuscript. That's telling you that that's going up a level. So I'll go back so you're not lost with what's going on. You can use the up buttons and the down buttons to navigate through your outline in the binder. In the middle, it says Stave 1, Marley's Ghost. If we tap on there, I know you have to be in edit for that to work. Hang on, we'll come to that shortly. What I wanted to show you was, some are green, some are blue. What does it all mean? Well, there is an eye icon, and the eye icon brings up the info panel, which is usually on the right-hand side of the desktop version. So if you're used to the desktop version, you'll be used to seeing something that looks like this. It has the name at the top, so we're looking across on the left-hand side. It has the name of the section, it has the synopsis, it has the label, and that's where it's getting its green colour from. It's the label. It has a status, only it hasn't got a status at the moment, but you can integrate yourself with this and choose one. So let's say, no, actually that's the final draft, it's finished. That's how you would do that. You then have notes, where you can tap to add notes. So let's put something in there, finally finished. I actually use that area. I'll go back from the inspector. I use that area to put in that markdown that I then use in the export. So you can use it for whatever you like, but this is how you access it. You then have the option, scrolling down even more, as to whether you want this particular document included in the compile, which is where you come to export it, whether it's a folder or not, what icon it's got. Now obviously it's using the default, but you actually have a range of icons in here, so you can change those if you want. So let's say here, let's put a light bulb there next to it, so it will change that folder icon to a light bulb. And then you can choose what you have on the corkboard, and at the moment it's not going to have an image. So all of that is the inspector, which again we brought up with that eye icon on the top row. But you don't have to do it just that way if you want. If you tap and hold, which I just did, it opens up exactly the same info panel, but as a popover. And it's a little bit bigger, so you can actually work with it. It is modal, you can't do anything else while you're doing it, but it's that little bit bigger. You can then choose whether to open that element, which is the folder, or you can tap done, and any changes you make will ripple through there. Now I'm seeing I've got a question, so I'm going to head off and see what that question is. Right, why was the right hand side still showing the text for Marley's visit when the left hand had the new text document? That is a good question, and that is one of the great features with it that I'm going to show you very soon. So hold on to that thought. Just because the desktop version has the binder on the left and the binder always stays on the left, doesn't mean in the mobile version that that area on the left is only the binder or only the outline. Yes, hold that thought. It is basically just another area that you can load in whatever you want, and I'll show you shortly how to do that. But that's why the two are independent. Okay, so we are looking at what options we've got on the right-hand side in the editor, but we've not actually edited anything yet. But we've just looked at the I button. There is a clock on there, and as I tap on that, that is another way to access the recent documents. So right back at the beginning, if you remember, let's go out and have a look. When we looked at the file, so this is the first top level of the Christmas Carol file, there was an option for recent. And that information, once I tapped recent, it's loaded the recents into the binder area. Now I'm doing massive air quotes because that binder area, now you're beginning to see, I hope, it's not just the binder. It loads in other things as well. And what it's doing at the moment is recent items. It could also load in, if there were any, bookmarks. So although it is the binder, and you will probably use the binder there a lot, it's a great place to load in other elements that are more relevant to where you are at the moment. So maybe you're in review mode and you want to quickly go through some bookmarks you've done. You can load the bookmarks into that binder area. Really, on the mobile version, it's known as the sidebar. So I will probably say binder because I've been using Scrivener for 10 years, but it is actually more accurately known as the sidebar, and you can load different content into it. Okay, let's get back to our manuscript and open that up. So we know that the button there gives you the recent documents. You also have a plus icon, which again gives you the opportunity to make a new document. So pretty much, Scrivener for iOS adapts to allow you to do anything that you need to do wherever you are. It's not prescriptive in terms of there's only one way I can add a new item. The interface changes and adapts to what it is that you're doing. Now, I've got a very short content piece there, which is the preface to the whole thing. Now, once I've loaded in actual content, so this is a piece of content, you've got, so I'm going to take you through what you've got again. You've got the go full screen option. You've got the back button to take you back. You can navigate up and down your outline with those buttons. You can bring up the information for this particular document. You've got your recents. You can actually search. You can search through this particular document, this particular piece of content, and you can add new. But at the bottom, you've got extra options. The first one of which, so let's have a look at that one. Come on, mouse pointer disappeared. There we go. That one there. That is to add a bookmark. And it's that simple. You literally just tap it. Once you've tapped there to add a bookmark and go back through there, there is this particular document, this particular scrivening is now bookmarked. So if it's something that you're working on and it's quite low down in your outline, you can use bookmarks to navigate backwards and forwards to it. You also have, and this is a biggie, what I just tapped there was that icon at the bottom, which is 3 lines, looks like a burger icon. This, however, is the draft navigator. So as I tap on there, you may, if you use the desktop version, be familiar with Scrivenings mode. And all that means, if you've never heard the term or you've never used Scrivener, all it means is all the individual little pieces, chunks of content that you've got going, it shows you them in a scrolling window. That you don't have to go across to the binder and actually select it. You're looking at all of your content separated with black lines. And that is what you have here. It isn't quite a full scrivening mode, but it's called the draft navigator. And what it's doing is showing me everything without me having to make a selection. So I can navigate this by scrolling. And you can see the individual pieces here. What I've done is I've made them different colours so you can actually see where one document ends and the next starts. And is separated with a dashed line. And as I scroll upwards, you should see that at the bottom, so I'm speeding up because it's a full novel, you can see that you also have this slider and you can navigate with that slider as well. So I'm just pulling that backwards and forwards. That's the draft navigator. So that way you get a bird's eye view of all of your content. You also have there, it's saying there's 72 words. Now, as I mentioned when we were looking at the slides, you could have there, you may know how many words you want to write. You may need to know how many you had before. So you're interested in metadata. It could be the word count. It could be something completely different. It could be labels and statuses and things. But one of the things is the word count. So if the word count is important to you. For me, the word count is a lot less important unless I'm writing a magazine article. And then in which case I have my eye firmly on it. I can't go more than X number of words. If you tap on there, it's not just telling you that there's 72 words, it's actually giving you a lot more information. It's showing you the entire word count of the draft, and it's telling you there's actually no target set. But I could set some if I wanted to. So if I go in there, draft target, let's say 12,000 words. That way we're a little bit short, but not too much. In fact, we're almost there, aren't we? But you can also set a session target. So if you decide in your lunch hour you'd like to write 500 words, you can set a session target as well. That session target runs around the outside, whereas the draft target is in the middle. In fact, with that draft target, I'm going to take that up to 15 so you can actually see it's not a solid circle. There you go. The little chunk that's missing is the bit I've got to write. And then you can choose to start a new session and start writing. So if the word count's incredibly important to you, you can keep an eye on it through there. The other thing that you've got here is a share sheet, and you can choose whether to compile a draft, send a copy of that somewhere else, send it to another application, and you've also got a sync now option, which obviously has the Dropbox icon. That is there so you can synchronize without having to navigate all the way back up to projects and synchronize it. So I'm going to hit that option now, and I have made a few changes in here. So it's saying you've made changes to 13 files and I'm going to synchronize them back, and that's exactly what it's doing. So it won't take too long because they weren't huge files that I made changes to, hopefully. There we go, they're all synchronized. So you don't have to go back up to the top level to synchronize, but you'll see as I'm stuck here waiting for it to finalize its sync that you can't do anything else while it synchronizes. Now, another thing to think about while it's thinking about it, and hopefully lets me back in, there we go. You may be thinking, what if I've inadvertently left this file open on my Mac? Oh no, it's open on my Mac. That's okay. It isn't a problem. I have managed to get sync conflicts, but I forced it to see if it would do it. Most of the time it's absolutely fine. You go back to your desktop and there is a new button, which I'll show you when we have a look at this in the desktop. Now, so far we've just looked at this. We've not made any changes to it. The minute you tap in there to make changes, everything does change. Your interface changes. You now have different options. So I'm going to take you through what you've got in the editor when you are editing. You've still got that take it full screen option. So you've still got that. You have a sync button. I'm not going to tap it again. We'll have to sit and wait. That synchronises you up with Dropbox again. You also have a typewriter mode, which moves to where you're typing to the middle of the screen. So that's just toggled on and off with that T button. Again, you have your word count, and again, it's interactive. There is the drafts. You can set your session time, etc. So it's all available in there. Now, of more interest to you when you're actually creating the content is formatting that content. Now, you've got a format option, and within there, you have access to the font, the size, bold, italic, underline, the alignments. You also have presets. I won't say styles, they are presets. They don't automatically update, but they are presets to get you going. You also have in there formatting options where you can copy format and paste format, which I think is amazing in an iOS app. I could have forgiven them if that hadn't made the cut, but it did. Okay, and you can even set your default formatting. So all of that is available from your format menu up there. But obviously, before we get that far, you'd need to have text selected to make some changes to it. Now, you can, of course, double tap to make a selection, you can use the blue handles. Don't know about you, I find that a bit fiddly. There is another way in Scrivener, which is fantastic. So I'm going to move that down to endeavoured. Endeavoured's a big enough word, isn't it? Let's try and get in the middle of the word. Right. You've seen the interface of Scrivener for iOS around the app. But if you look at the toolbar above the keyboard, there is an extra option. So I am tapping across near the home button. I'm tapping that option and it's giving me an extended keyboard. So I'm going to start at the beginning of that extended keyboard. And I do appreciate the one downside with this is that the more interface I have, the less I can actually see my text. But this bar is really cool. This is an extra bar, an extra add-on to the standard keyboard. So this is the area that we're looking at. And it's toggled on and off with this button here. So if I just tap on, tap off, it appears and disappears. What you have on here are extra elements that as a writer you may need. And it gives you that there. This particular one, there's 3 of them. You tap it and it appears, but within it, if you swipe across from right to left, that's the second set of tools, and do it again, and that's the third set of tools. So it puts at your fingertips what you need when you need it. So let's go back to the very first one. I think that is for when you're actually creating the content. If you need the full stop or the exclamation mark to save you holding down the shift key, there they are. But that's really when you're actually writing it. If you're formatting, the second toolbar is your friend. The first option you have across on the left hand side, that actually looks like a selection, and if you tap that button, that's actually what it does. It selects the word that you have selected, that your insertion point was actually inside. It then behaves exactly the same as if you dragged it. So I'm now dragging it and I'm adding to that selection. But what I find better and far more accurate is that the buttons over on the left next to the selection, and incidentally that one's changed to blue to tell you have a live selection, but these select by word and by character or by line. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to tap that one to extend it by word, and it keeps going. If I want to do it by line and select downwards, I can do that. So I'm using the one over on the right. I can move it up again if I've selected too much, and these let you select just by character. So I need to add 2 more characters there. Then with my selection, which isn't the best selection, is it? I've sort of stopped midway, but never mind. If I go on to the third toolbar we have here, you can now do all sorts of wonderful things with it. So tapping the first button, which is a pencil. So I'm right over on the left-hand side. I'm going to tap that. And it lets you add a link. So you could select some text and then add a link. And if you choose to add a link, this is what happens. And you have 2 options. You can add a web link. So I could actually put in a website there. But you can also link internally to the Scrivener file by just choosing something here. So I'm going to make that an external link. I'll put my website. Always dangerous. I'll probably spell something wrong. Nope, there we go. And I can tap done on that. So that now is a link. So I'm just going to go back, let you see that you could have added a comment, a footnote, an inline footnote, an inline annotation, or insert an image. Really doesn't matter. Then you've got the second option, which is just to insert a link on its own. So if you use that a lot, that is there on a button of its own. Now I'm going to make a different selection here. So I've just got one word, and I'm going to make it struck through with that. You can also change the alignment, which I won't fiddle with. But moving along, so I'm moving across to the right-hand side now, that highlights it, and you can choose what colour the highlight is. The next one allows you to actually change it. So if I wanted that text to be red, I can do that there. I can use this to put a footnote in. So refer to, and then whatever. And I now have a footnote in that document as well. And it's showing me I have a footnote because it's highlighted there. And the last thing that I can do at the end there, let's move across to there, is I can actually put a comment in. So all of this works in a very similar way to the desktop version, and it's really replicating the desktop version. So let's put a note in there, and done. So that's actually working with the text. You can use an external keyboard. If you do, you would be editing with it looking like that. You'd have a lot more room to see your text, but you would lose those buttons on that toolbar. If you're on the fence about an iPad Pro, the large one, 12.9 inch, I can tell you it's fabulous. The iPad I'm using this on today is a standard sized iPad. It's an iPad Pro 9.7 from March this year. But the iPad Pro larger one, awesome. Absolutely awesome. You've just got that extra room to manoeuvre. Okay, so we've done quite a bit with that at the moment. What we haven't done with it is take it out of here. I think I have shown you everything else. There are other elements that you can do in here. So if I just select that, you've got cut, copy, paste, replace. You can make it bold, italic, underline. You can share it, you can highlight it, you can comment. But you can also come in here, and a Scrivener specific that you've got is the split option. So if you wanted maybe to split your document at that point, you can split it, and that becomes an extra document within your file. To make sure we can see that, it will be somewhere down here. Not the opening, it was up in the contents. There it is. So there's the original preface, which now has the bottom half missing, which is in a file of its own. Now, obviously, if you've done that and you've made a mistake, how do you rejoin them? Well, what I did there, very swiftly, tapped Edit, selected the preface and preface 1, and at the very bottom, there is now a merge option. It appears because it's relevant to the context you're working in. You've got two documents selected. So if you would like to merge them, you can tap merge. It tells you that the text notes and synopsis will be merged. The keywords, references and snapshots will all be merged, except for the first, and it can't be undone. Now, in this case, I'm happy with that. So merge those two together, and I now have one preface, and everything is back where it should be. There it all is, and there's the text at the bottom. Now let's get back, going up in my navigation, to the manuscript, which is the content of the entire thing. So what I'm doing is I'm tapping that button in the lower right hand corner, and I'm selecting compile a draft. And this is how you get your content out of Scrivener for iOS. This is the compile feature. If you've used the desktop one, you'll be familiar with it. It's the compile feature. The first options you have are what file format would you like? PDF, Word, which is a docx format, RTF or plain text. I'll go with PDF. You can choose what that looks like. So how you work in Scrivener during your editing has no bearing on the output that you get when you compile it. And that's a good thing. I tend to work in 16-point font, which is usually quite big, but it just works for how I work. But as you've seen, when I compile, I'm not even half the time trying to get a PDF or a Word file that looks like a book. I'm exporting code, or I'm exporting a PDF that turns into something else, or I'm exporting content that I will take somewhere else. So these, you have here 5 formats that Scrivener thinks you might need, that you might use. So I'll export this with, let's try Courier. You can create your own appearance definitions. That's beyond what I can squeeze into an hour and a bit, I'm afraid, but you can do that. You can then elect to remove comments. Now, I did have a comment on this, but I'm going to leave that in there. Then you need to set the paper size, which you can do. So I'll make sure it's A4 just in case. You can put in a header if you want. So I'm going to put in there 30, no it wasn't, was it? UK time, it was 1400 hours. That was our demo. So I'll put that in for the header. And we've got the footer is going to show you the page number. And then the first item is the title page. Actually, at this stage, it's not. So I won't turn that option on. Then you need to compile it. And that's it. It's compiled it very quickly. It's gone away, and I'm going to scroll down. Now, just to give you an idea of how fast that would be with your content, if it's an article you've written, I think that article that I wrote was about 900 words. This just compiled 12,000 words in 2 seconds, if that. 1 to 2 seconds. So it's very, very fast. You can see in there it's got my formatting, it's got my highlighting, but it has changed the font. So it is independent of how you want to work. I personally can't be doing with a serif font when I'm actually working, but I might want it output like that. So just scroll down, see what you've actually got there. And there it all is. That is your compile, your manuscript, your final output. And you can see it's got the header of it. It says demo at the top and it's got the page number at the bottom. Now, it's not at this stage actually gone anywhere. It's sat within Scrivener for iOS. So you can tap the share option and you can actually send that out. So I could send it via email, I could print it. Let's try and be dangerous here and let's try printing it. See if I can get a PDF of it on my desktop. Oh, I live dangerously. Okay, Novate is what I'm working on and I have a virtual printer on here. So my iMac is called Novate and I have a virtual printer on it. And all I need to do is tap print. And with a lot of luck, it will chug away with this little self for a while. There we go. It will print it and then it will open that PDF. And there it is in PDF Expert. So that is from iPad to desktop in a PDF. And if you hadn't have stood around like I did explaining things in less than 10 seconds. And there it all is, 12,000 words of it. So just to show you that we do actually have lots and lots of pages. There they all are on the side over there. Right, so I'm going to put that down. Okay, heading up to the hour here. I'm just going to show you that you can actually send it to an app as well. So if you had an app on here, like PDF Expert, and you wanted to read your PDF on your iPad, you could do that too. Or you could send it to Goodreader, iAnnotate. What you actually see in here, in these options, will depend on what you actually have installed and how you have configured it. So I have lots and lots and lots of apps installed, but I also have configured it within here. And some of them are turned off. So for instance, OneDrive is turned off. If I wanted to add that back, I could do that. So you could do that as well. And when you're done, you literally do just tap done. Right, I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to show you what that looks like on a phone. And the only reason that I haven't demoed it on the phone is that the iPad is easier, much easier for you to see. It's much easier for me to work with. And it has the corkboard, whereas the phone doesn't. Now, also just to show you that now we are in it's not synchronized state. There is a little icon there with an arrow pointing upwards saying, please synchronize me. So I will synchronize that while I sort out the sharing of my phone. So let's get my phone shared in all of this. Oh, you've got to love these really demanding demos. There we go. And there is my phone. It really is my phone. I'm going to lose this iPad. So that's synchronized. Way to go. And this is now my phone. And there is Scrivener on my phone. So I'm going to open it up. I'm going to let it have a think about it. Immediately, it tells you you've got changes here that need to be synchronized. And it's telling me that A Christmas Carol's changed and so has Testbed. So I'm going to sync now. And it goes away and it starts synchronizing with Dropbox. I was going to say there'll be more than 13 files because I changed a few after we last synchronized. Now, what happened there was two things. A Christmas Carol synchronized and that Testbed disappeared. That's because I deleted it. Okay, that was one I really did make a mess with. Right, so what we've got here is Christmas Carol, exactly as we had it on the iPad. Exactly the same information. Obviously, it can't put a corkboard at the side, and you are going to have to drill up and down a lot more than on the iPad, but it's all here. So if we go and have a look at the manuscript, there's all the elements. It's all set exactly the same, so all of the colour codings there and everything that you need. We have a look at the contents page. There's the contents page. There was the one that we edited. That's the one we edited, and we had comments on it and all kinds of other things. You can bring up the info for that with the I button at the bottom. You could change the status of that to final draft. You could change the label of that to chapter. You could add notes if you want. and they are written back to that. So as I say, it's all there. You can work with that. So if we go in there to edit that, you have exactly the same options in terms of there is an extra keyboard layer there, which has got punctuation on the first one. It's got the selections on the second one, and it's got formatting on the last one. So that's incredibly useful. That's a great use of space on an iPhone. This is an iPhone 6 Plus, so it is one of the larger iPhones, but it does work right down to an iPod Touch of mine, which is very tiny, and it's still usable. It's still usable. If you just want to tap away and add stuff, or you want to edit something, I think it really is usable and doable. You also have access to all of the stats and the targets. So apart from the corkboard, virtually everything else is identical with that version. Right, okay, I am going now to wrap up. And, is it thinking about it? Oh, you are. Jolly good. Right, okay, so let's have a recap of what we actually looked at. If you want the fully integrated mobile workflow, you can include Windows, Mac, iOS, and you will need Dropbox to hold it all together. There is a free Dropbox account. It gives you 2 gig, and if you need more than that, there is an option to have 1 terabyte, and that is $7.99 a month. As you've seen now how it works. It pulls the content down from Dropbox. It allows you to work with it in the middle, and then when you've finished, it sends it back up to Dropbox again. It does that via using a default folder or a folder of your choosing, but the default folder is in the apps folder, so it's Dropbox, apps, Scrivener. And once you start working with it, you'll see a lot of that going on, but it does it very quickly. It really does do it very quickly. So as I said, you can get a free Dropbox account. If you need a Dropbox account, I've got a link that I think will give you extra space, so let me know if you need one. In terms of hardware that you'll need, if your device can run iOS 9, then it can run Scrivener for iOS. It's as simple as that. So it doesn't matter if it's a mini or an iPhone, whatever. If it will support it, it will run it. So, importantly, the cost. The cost is $19.99. That is $14.99. And a good way to make some savings, up to 20%, is to use an iTunes card to buy it. I get virtually all of my iTunes cards at a 20 to 25% discount when they're on offer, and then spend them on wonderful things like this. So it's going to cost you £15 or $20. And if you're watching live, that's tomorrow. It will be available tomorrow. So all that's left for me to say is enjoy your writing. Whatever it is you're creating, and as you've seen from my content, it doesn't have to be the great novel. If you would like to see the replay of this content, then head off to that address, fill in the form, and in a couple of days, when it's edited, I will send you out a link to the replay of the content. So just to remind you, I've been Elaine Giles, and you can find me all over the internet as Elaine Giles, but specifically my blog, elainegiles.co.uk, and all the social media things that are average-ish. I'm not on Snapchat yet, but who knows, maybe one day. So thanks for attending. We're now going to head off into Q&A. So if you have any questions, do let me know what they are. I would love to hear your questions. I've already got a few via email, so I'll answer those first. And I should be looking at the chat. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to have to come out of that so I can see the chat. And what I'll do while we're doing that is put this on the screen. Okay, if we need to look at that for the demo, then I will do. So let me see the chat. Do we have questions? I've got 3,000 iPads to say. Okay, right. Never use the corkboard. I must admit, I remember saying a couple of days ago, I don't overly use the corkboard myself. And once I was arranging in the binder, I thought, what are you doing? It would be far easier to do it with the corkboard. So I started using it, and it was great. Right. So questions. Is there a French version? At the moment, the version that's coming out tomorrow is English only, but I have been reading their Twitter stream, and French and German are coming along as a matter of urgency, so it shouldn't be too long before there is actually a French version. Right, so one of the questions I've got is, you've got Dropbox, but you don't want to synchronize it all. That's a good reason for me to switch back to my demo view and show you what I did on Windows, because I too have a similar problem to yourself, which is I don't run a physical Windows box. I run a virtual Windows box. And the last thing that I want is to have all the content of my Dropbox in two places on one machine. So if you think about it, my virtual machine, let me try and get this virtual machine to show. Come along. There we go. My virtual machine exists as a file on my main Mac hard drive. And if I were to download 8 to 10 gig of information, that would balloon and I'd just have 2 copies of it. And it would have to synchronize every time it started. Horrible, horrible. So what I did on Windows, to get Scrivener working on Windows, there is a Windows version, is go into my Dropbox folder. And I did what's called a selective sync. So what I have here, this is my Dropbox folder. So my account, Dropbox, there is that apps folder. Now these elements outside of it are status files. They need to be there for other applications to function. But I'm not interested in them at all. What I'm interested in is this, and there's only one folder on here. And within that apps folder that had like 12 to 15 folders on my Mac, on Windows only has the one. And as I go into it, it only has the files that I'm working with. So what I would suggest you do, if you either don't have much space in Dropbox or you don't particularly want everything in Dropbox, maybe it's backups, downloaded on your machine, is to use selective sync. And that will help you in that regard. Right, question live here, which is, what's your view on Scrivener versus Ulysses? Oh, there's the question, isn't it? I must admit, I've been using Ulysses when I want to work mobile. And as you saw, I'm beta testing the next version of that as well. Ulysses is, in one way, they're very similar. They do a similar job in terms of if you're writing content, it doesn't matter about the app, does it? You're concentrating on your content. You can use things like keywords in both Scrivener and Ulysses. Keywords didn't make it to Scrivener for iOS. But in terms of, at the end of it, do you have an article? Do you have a piece of prose? It's just a matter of personal preference. What am I going to do now there's a Scrivener version? Well, I'm definitely going to take the majority of my work into Scrivener, because it means I don't have to do the copy and paste shuffle when I get back to my Mac. What I have been doing is writing stuff in Ulysses and then copying it back to Scrivener as an archive, really. One of the issues that I would love it if Scrivener supported Markdown. If it had little helpy buttons to help me with Markdown. Not that I can't write Markdown, I can. But I don't particularly want to do it on a phone in a crowded train carriage. Struggling with it. You know, one comma out of place and it won't compile. So I'd love it if it had that, whereas with Ulysses, it's built in. Ulysses is really a Markdown editor. And so if you write in Markdown, you're going to find it easier in Ulysses. Ulysses uses iCloud Sync, whereas Scrivener only at the moment uses Dropbox. So if you're not a fan of Dropbox, if you'd rather have iCloud, it can't do that at the moment. And that's not because they can't be bothered adding it. It's because the way that iCloud works is not conducive to a syncing system that the application needs control of. So if you are using iCloud, then that might be a clincher for you, in which case it's going to be Ulysses. For me, I think my contents, I'm more interested in the meta information wrapped around my content than the content half the time. So I think Scrivener for me, apart from specific projects. But as I've said, I do love writing Markdown in Ulysses. And of course, there's nothing to stop you using both and copy and pasting. It, horses for courses, it depends where you are, what you're doing, and what the final output is. I agree with you that Ulysses in particular, it's very minimalist, and yet it's incredibly powerful. Whereas Scrivener has everything you need wherever you need it, and therefore there is a lot of interface. I don't think there's too much. I don't think it's to the point that it crowds out doing the work, but I do agree with you, the other one is far more minimalist. I've only ever had one sync problem with Ulysses, and that was no doubt iCloud. But as you've said, it's the ancillary information that you take with it, the extra stuff. Ulysses could do it, but you would have to build the structure. If you think about how Scrivener works with the main manuscript folder and the research folder, of course you could replicate that in Ulysses, but it would just be another folder. It would not be a special folder with templates in and things. It would just be another folder, and it would be there for you to manage it manually. I had one more difference there, and I've just forgotten what it was, and it was a really important one. Ooh! And it will come back to me, probably the minute we finish. Let me think. I was thinking about Ulysses. It was something it had, or didn't have. Something one or other of them had, that the other one didn't. It'll come back to me, I'm sure. Okay, are there any other questions from anybody in the chat? Or just tell me what you think. Will you be buying? I've heard a lot of people say, take my money, it's worth 10 times as much, which is where I'm at, really. And I've heard other people say, is it free because I've got the desktop version? And the answer to that is no, because it isn't an added extra to the desktop version. You could use, if you only had an iPad and you don't want the desktop version, then you could use this as your primary creation platform. So no, it is a charged for app, and it is worth, in my opinion, every penny. So I'm not seeing people writing. Are you chatting, or have you gone away? Let me see. Oh, I'm being told I'm still in double figures in terms of attendees. So you are still there. So if you do have a question, type that in. You're very welcome. I hope you found it useful. We'll be doing all of that again tonight at 8 o'clock if you fancy a rerun. I think we've got even more booked tonight than we had today. So hopefully YouTube servers will be working, rather than giving me a nightmare 5 minutes before I go live. So again, apologies for it being late, but at least we got through it, hopefully without you disappearing or me disappearing. And you've got all the information that you need. Right, so I will put into the chat, when I find my Keynote file, which I do believe is somewhere down here, I'll put into the chat that link. If you would like the replay, then go to that link, put your address in, and I will get it to you within a couple of days. If you would like to attend tonight, I will put another link in for that. There's no H on that HTTP. So that is the link if you would like to see the replay. And the other one is if you would like to go tonight, which is not there, are you? Right, it was... Oh, it's making me type it in, honestly. And as soon as that happens, well... And I think there was a number on the end of that as well. Oh, dear. I don't like seeing not found. Come on, I've got this link somewhere. I know I have. Let's look at the full history and get it from there. Come on. Scrivener. Right. Try that. No, that's not the one either. I will get this, I will. Let me just see if there's any more questions. No more questions yet. Okay, let me just get this last link for you. Yeah, I'm going to find this link open in another window, aren't I, at some point? It's not auto-completing. Okay, I know what I will do. Hopefully it's on my clipboard and I can get it from there. Right, I will put you back to that while I find this link. I will find this link. I will, if it kills me, which it probably will. Alright, let's try that one. I have the link. We will all be pleased to know I actually have the link. You are very welcome. I've been enjoying the beta. The thing was, it was kind of thrown on us quite swiftly. I think they thought it would be in review for longer. They were aiming for the end of this week, and that was about 2 weeks ago. And they put it in for review last Wednesday and said they were hoping for the end of this week. And it passed review within 24 hours. So they were able to release it tomorrow. So it would have been nice to have another 4 days or so. But in the absence of that, I hope you got a good idea for the feel of it, that everything that you need is actually there. For me, it's going to probably change my workflow. I have a very large content creation file, and it has multiple courses in it, 3-hour-long courses. And it's quite big, and I made the decision to do that logically, that as my workflow matured, I would be able to retrofit it because the content was already in the file. So if I added extra keywords or statuses, I wouldn't have to go and add them to multiple files. But the way that the mobile version works, I can see me separating out my content now and doing that. Is the $14.99 the full price or an introductory price? They've not said it's an introductory price. They've just said it's $14.99, $19.99. If it is an introductory price, doubtless it will say so on the web page tomorrow or in iTunes. They may be doing something with the website tomorrow as well. They've got a countdown going on their website, so who knows? Because at the moment it's not responsive, and it'd be nice if it was. So who knows? Keep your eye on that. As soon as I know, I will let you know, Storm. Okay, so is that it for questions? Is that it? If that's it, I will bid you farewell until 8 o'clock tonight, UK time, which is 7 o'clock UTC, and a different time wherever you are. I should help you out with that, shouldn't I? Eastern Daylight, it will be 3 o'clock, and Pacific time, it will be 12 o'clock noon. So if you would like to come along and see that again, then sign up at that link that I struggled manfully to find for you. Okay, so I am going to head off now. If you do have any questions after the event, then just get in touch with me. Probably the fastest way for you is either my website, elainegiles.co.uk, and there's a contact form, or Twitter. I am on Twitter, so do come on there and with any questions that you might have or comments about it. And if you're buying tomorrow, I wish you all the best with it, and I hope you enjoy using it. So until next time, I will indeed see you next time. Oh, and thank you very much, Evie. That's very, very kind of you. But that was awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I know that you booked for tonight as well. And this was a last minute that you came to the afternoon one as well. So I shall see you again tonight as well. But until then, goodbye from me.